whatever it is that makes you want to get up in the morning or stay up at night or cheers your bad mood or makes you feel a sense of importance and joy, pursue it. Whether it's cooking, but gardening, whatever it is, you have a right to it. And you have a voice.
Welcome to another episode of the Gay Barchives show, where we explore gay history one bar at a time. I'm your host, Art Smith, and today we have the pleasure of interviewing the iconic photographer Meryl Meisler, who took some amazing pictures going all the way back to the 70s in Fire Island and throughout New York. Welcome, Meryl.
Thank you, Art. I'm so pleased to be with you and your audience.
And I'm so glad to have you here. It was exciting. About a month ago, Bobby Bonanno contacted me and said, I'm coming to St. Pete, and we're bringing this concept of Fire Island tea dance to St. Pete. Kind of reviving the tradition of the 70s and 80s, where a bunch of gay men would be out in the middle of the afternoon on the weekend days, just partying and having a good time. And Fire Island, of course, was famous for that in the summertime. The program was called Fire Island Tea Dance, and part of the program was your photo exhibit at the Work. Small gallery just a block or two away from Cocktail in downtown St. Pete. And I walk in, there are room after room of black and white photographs, mostly candid shots taken in the 70s and 80s throughout Fire Island. And lo and behold, standing right there is Meryl Meisler. It was so nice to meet you there. It's amazing what you've done.
Thank you. It was a really joyous occasion. And what a wonderful surprise to learn that I, a New Yorker, did not know St. Pete and Tampa and the vicinity was such a huge positive LGBTQ plus community.
Yes, there are quite a few of us here. I live in Tampa, just a few miles away. And I was so excited to see that show and see the photography. And of course, one of the first things that happened at the gallery when I was there is another woman named Judy Jupiter came up to me and she said, have you seen my new pictures? And walked me back to the room where the pictures of her you took in the 70s in Fire Island were posted on the wall. And so that was an interesting introduction to a person that obviously has played a big part as a friend in your life for many years. But what was really compelling to me was just how candid and, real, authentic those pictures are. They weren't staged, they weren't posed. You didn't ask people to make funny faces or smile or wave at the camera. It was just you walking around the island, capturing part of our history that's more than 50 years old. What inspired you to do that?
Well, I think I need to backtrack a little bit. Said photography has just always been an interest of mine. My dad was a great family photographer. And when I went to graduate school, I took a photography class inspired by the work of Arbus. But to backtrack further, I grew up on Long Island, which Fire Island is a barrier beach off of. But I grew up in Nassau County, closer to the city. Fire Island is near to Suffolk County. But I was a Girl Scout. And I went to Girl Scout camp in the summer for like 2 weeks. And it was the summer that Marilyn Monroe died. The troops went on a beach sleepover on the beach, and a bunch of girls were out at the shore pointing out into the water and talking about a place called Fire Island, where there were naked fairies in little houses with names like Shirley Temple. And I'm like looking, I see nothing. I'm looking for naked fairies. I was fascinated. I'm thinking the Tinkerbell's out there. And then I forgot about it. Flash forward, 1977, I was frequenting the disco scene in New York City with my friend Judy Jupiter. And I befriended now you would say a transgender person named Alexis, who was friends with someone named Barnett Chodnowski. Barnett had liked me. I mean, he was actually at the time several decades older than I was, but he liked me. We laughed together, and he had recently broken up with his long-term partner, his boyfriend, who owned property with, owned a business, beauty salon with. He was heartbroken, and he said he has a house in Cherry Grove, Fire Island, and I was welcome to come see it. I'd never been to Fire Island, and I said, I could be one to have someone who made him smile there, and I said, sure. Can I bring my friend Judy Jupiter just to go? We go there, and it didn't take me too long to realize I'm here at his house. He's like maybe 200 steps away from the Ice Palace, from the disco you're talking about, the beach, the queer as could be community. And I'm realizing I had a flashback. This is the place. This is the place. Fire Island, the naked fairies, and the little houses with names like Shirley Temple. And again, photography is my passion. I carry my camera to photograph. I tend to photograph and look for, this is retrospect, I've always looked for people who are expressing joy, who are having a ball, who are just loving life and confidence. It was eye candy. So, and Barnett invited me to come back again and again anytime I wanted, and I did. We stayed in the attic, and because I had a place to stay, I could bring my heavy film camera, because in between going in the water and the sand, I had a place to put my camera, and I photographed things that I found that were interesting.
Now, at that time in the 70s, did the general public in Long Island or New York City, were they well aware of Fire Island, or was it just kind of a secret that was only known to kind of gay people and some of their friends?
I would say that being obviously the Girl Scouts in Suffolk County knew about it. I was not aware of it because I grew up in Nassau County. We went to Jones Beach and the beach clubs there. However, looking back and reading about history, it's been, and thank you to someone like Bobby Bonanno, it's been a queer destination since definitely, in the 20th century, the mid 20th century, maybe longer, but predominantly. So how refreshing. But listen, I grew up in homophobic, segregated Long Island. So for me to realize that would come to be was a pleasant surprise.
Now, what was the energy like there in the 70s when you were taking these photographs and hanging out for a few years every weekend on Fire Island? What was the energy like? What did it feel like to you?
It was, I guess if you supercharged, exciting energy, people having a ball, and it wasn't just queer people, but everyone was welcome. Anyone. And the disco scene was raging. It was raging there, and Ice Palace was one of the first discos in New York. The music was outrageous. We're talking about 8 years after Stonewall. So this is really exciting period, and also pre-AIDS. And the sense of liberation and joy was infectious. And I still see it when I go there. But it was I didn't know I was there in the epicenter. But I certainly was having a really great time. So enjoy, ecstatic joy magnified by the sun. You can enjoy a beach barrier, just for that's a beautiful beach. No cars, certainly no cell phones then. No bad vibes. And it was a nude beach. You could be who you are, how you want to be.
Now, one thing I've noticed is I live in Florida now, but I grew up just outside of New York. And one thing I've noticed is that in places like New York, Boston, Chicago, where you have, fairly harsh winters, when the summer comes around, people rejoice. I mean, everybody gets happy. The first day they can put on shorts and a t-shirt and go outside, it's like a holiday. Down here in Florida, it's like another
I
day.
know that.
Um, but I understand that one of the big driving forces of really building the gay community in Fire Island was Jimmy Murray, who is the owner of the Ice Palace and also opened one up called Ice Palace 57 on 57th Street in Manhattan. So he was kind of the king of the clubs back then. He had, and plus he owned numerous other clubs. Um, but the vibe that you describe is just kind of amazing. And of course, the Sunday tea dances with all the gay men and whoever else happened to be around, dancing and drinking and partying their hearts out on the weekend was just something that kind of took over the whole country. In the 80s, we started seeing tea dances throughout the country. It was a very popular concept in the gay bar scene, especially in big cities and places that had some, some warmth. I lived in Atlanta in the 80s, and I know I went to a million tea dances over the course of my time there. But Jimmy had a big part in kind of building that scene there and building the energy. And of course, other things have happened since then. But when you took those pictures, did you have any concept whatsoever that anybody was going to want to look at them, that they were going to be important 20, 30, 40, 50 years later?
I would say I took them with a sense of that I was part of witnessing something special, like the work of Brassai, who documented Paris's nightlife. And when I went to disco scenes and see, I said, "This is my nightlife." But I developed the film, put them in sleeves, printed very few. I didn't even show them to anyone. No one ever saw the Fire Island work. I think I did I have three vintage prints from the time. And it wasn't until decades later, upon my retirement of over 31 years as a New York City public school art teacher, that I started to really dig into my work and exhibit it seriously, and had the opportunity to do books and looking through and say, "Wow, look at this, look at this, look at this." And I did not know the power of the photographs and how culturally important they are historically, but also delightful.
Well, for the gay community, photographs like yours are kind of like looking at grandma's old family albums. You're seeing your history. And we don't have that kind of history because, you know, you didn't have gay events as a child. There was no, gay to document. And so looking at these pictures from, like I said, 50 years ago, it really brings back a part of our history and puts you in that place. Plus, for people who are not that old, who did not live through those days, they get to see what it was really like. And so I'm so grateful to you for taking these photographs and preserving them all these years. And of course, Bobby Bonanno, Fire Island Pines Historical Preservation Society, came in and he's bantering around this idea of reviving the Fire Island tea dance concept across the country, and apparently connected with you. What did you think when Bobby first called you and said, "Hey, Meryl, I have this great idea. We're going to throw a big party and we want you to be part of it"?
Okay, well, let's backtrack a little. I think I met Bobby in a funny way of around less than 3 years ago. And my work is getting a lot of notice. Like I said, I've been very fortunate, and I saw two or three of my photographs of Fire Island appeared. I Googled myself. What can I say? I Googled myself, and it pops up on this website without my credit on them, nothing. And I press sometimes I go, "Okay," and I write people, take it down. And then I looked at the website and I said, this, I'm a teacher. I can understand. I'm very tired. It's like, I can understand. It's like, I understand. I like what they were doing as Fire Island Pines Historical Society. And so I wrote to the contact administrator and I said, "You know what? These are my photographs. You really need to ask a photographer's permission but on top of that, and yes, they're all copyrighted and things like that. But actually, I like what you're doing. You may use it on your site, but please give me my credit. And this is the title, and this is the date and location, because it is history. Well, that began a conversation. I was introduced to Bobby by email. I mean, we had a conversation, email conversation, and then I would be on read up the articles he posted, and it was very pleasant. So you never know, don't bite on someone right away. And then 2 years ago, he said, you know what, I'd love to show you work in Fire Island. I have this annual event that I organize. Then it was called Souvenirs Weekend. Now it's the Fire Island Classic Tea Dance. I'd love to show them in Fire Island. I would love that. First of all, they've never been seen in there as one cohesive body of work at all. And I love the idea of a photograph being exhibited in the space where it was taken. And he contacted the Ice Palace, which was connected to the Cherry Go. Forgive me if I'm saying the name of the hotel incorrectly. The hotel that's right part of the Ice Palace. I believe it's called the Cherry Grove Hotel now. And they do have a space in their office, but it's not secure. It's open to the elements. And truthfully, I'm represented by a gallery, and my work, sells for a lot of money. And I said, well, since it can't be insured, instead of exhibiting real darkroom handmade prints, well, we could do digitally made prints, unsigned, and put them on the wall in the office where people come through. And I would love that. Fine. And my gallery said fine. And he arranged for this weekend dance extravaganza, similar to what happened in St. Pete, and book signings, and I loved it because they were there where they were, and people recognized it, or people going to see this is the very spot. They were from the Pines and Cherry Grove, but some of the things were taken right where they were standing, and then Bobby's come to my solo shows in my gallery Clamp here in Chelsea. We connected like crazy. Well, we were simpatico, and I think met Bobby. That's easy to do, but I'll claim him. And he's told me that he wants to move to plans to do his next chapter in St. Pete, and he'd like to bring the photographs there. I was like, I would do anything with him. He says yes, I'll follow him. It's just when something's right, it feels right. When people feel 100%, they are 100%. And he contacted the work gallery, who loved the idea. He arranged with Cocktail St. Pete, and we put up the show. And I love Matthew and Fritz at the work gallery curated from. I gave them a large amount to pick from. They picked photographs, and most of these were printed for the first time. And I'm back to my analog groups. I have a dark room again. I'm printing from the negatives, because there is a big difference. It's like diamonds and rhinestones. To me, sitting at a computer and a dark room print. It's not silk and polyester. So I exhibited the silk and diamonds, and you were there. It was magic. It was beautifully installed. Like I came with my wife Patricia, not a dog. We made a road trip via, and Judy Jupiter came down separately. They did say we have to do a separate room of the nudes. It's like fine, and I love the work. I loved the entire weekend and we made a road trip about it. And what a delightful, welcoming community you're part of.
Thank you. Now, when I didn't know what to expect when Bobby was talking about this tea dance concept and your photo exhibition and everything, but I was at all of it. I was at the gallery. I was at both days of the tea dance. One day had Robbie Leslie. The other day was Steve Sidewalk as the DJs. You were there. I saw you at the tea dance, kind of reliving your experiences from 40 or 50 years ago. Here you are poolside at a tea dance on a sunny day outdoors, and the energy was amazing. I mean, it was
Oh,
incredible how many people were out there, how much fun they were having. You know, that kind of retro color block dance floor blinking around by the pool, people dancing and talking. And I know you were bombarded by people who wanted to talk to you as soon as they realized that you were the person behind the photographs. Did that bring back memories for you? Did that feel like the vibe of the 70s or 80s without the
oh,
nudity?
the vibe was totally right on. And no, and I've really not stopped. I don't, I'm back out photographing the nightlife here. It's not, it's not as intense when you're in your 20s, but, and I still, like I said, and I've always gone down to Fire Island every year. And always, I look for similar positive things. Um, but that weekend, oh, energy galore, delight, friendliness, people from all over. I thought it wasn't locals. There was couples from Idaho. Like really strange parts of America where you think it'd be very scary to be out and gay, but we're everywhere. and seeing it was Bobby's idea to install a dance floor next to the pool, and boy did people dance, and boy did people have fun and jump in the pool. It's all good. It was, and I also liked, and this is what I've always sought for. When in clubbing, I like to go to clubs that are mixed. That's just my personal joy, and this was, and predominantly LGBTQ, but there were multi ages, multi ages, multi ethnicities, colors. Truthfully, I wore my Star of David, and people said, "I love your Star of David." And we were in a very strange point of history, which is, as a gay Jew, it's a tough time. And I love, well, I will. In my answer to anti-Semitism is like, I'm more Jewish, and I got compliments. I like always, even when I say about my work being like not posed, I do, and this has always been my style. I actually do ask permission because that's who I am, unless I totally miss something, and but I don't pose people. I do. There's an awareness of, like, even it's a hand signal or a gesture or may I. I'm just a very polite person. It's my preference because I think I would want someone else to ask me. And and honestly, I haven't developed the film yet. Like, I'm back to film because I'm working on a new book. I've been very busy, and, and I can't wait to develop it because I know it was so much fun, and that fun will come through.
Well, absolutely. And just so people can understand a little bit, I'm going to include in this video some of the photographs that I took at those events, which of course I will make sure people know they're not yours because I am not a professional photographer on any level. But I want people to see the energy that was there. And then, of course, we're going to intersperse it with pictures that you've taken in the past in Fire Island and more recently. And just last weekend, you were in Fire Island again for Bobby Bonanno's installation of the Fire Island Tea Dance Revival, but actually in Fire Island. So you were in the place where it happened to begin with.
Yes, like I said, I do go back every year, and I do. I live in the city, and Patty and I have a house up in Woodstock, New York. But I always, every single year since '77, except for 2020, when I didn't go anywhere, and for what reason, I always go back.
It was a Jewish holiday that year, right?
I mean,
It was a Jewish holiday that year, 2020.
the whole year, a little plague pandemic. But other than that, I always go back because
Well, I'm so glad that you documented so much of that history and that it's all out there. and that's preserved in multiple books so people can look at the pictures you took. Now, let's talk a little bit about some of the books that you've done prior to this Fire Island project that we're talking about with Bobby. The first one that I'm aware of is called A Tale of Two Cities, Disco Era Bushwick.
Mm-hmm.
What was that all about?
Well, I retired from as the public school art teacher in New York City in 2010. A few years earlier, through many circumstances, I was invited. Someone wanted to apply for a show at a museum show about Bushwick. I saw it and heard that I had pictures of the neighborhood because I taught there 14 years. Those pictures kind of launched my career, relaunched it. And there's a bar, burlesque drag club that was in Bushwick called Bizarre. It was just started by a French man named Jean-Stéphane Sauveur, and he saw my work in one show in Bushwick, and he wanted to show my work in his drag burlesque bar. He doesn't know that when I went to visit the place, and first I said because he had some of his own work in the basement, and I said, well, how is it? Because he's a filmmaker and stills. I said, how is it showing your work here? He said, well, okay, but it is a bar. People get drunk and they take things off the wall take it away. It's like, okay. So I went to my writing collaborator I was showing with. I said, this is great. I've had my work in museums and real galleries, and here it is, a drag burlesque bar in Bushwick, and they want to show my work, and people get drunk and take the work off the wall. And this woman said, don't be such a snob. So I came back a few weeks later, and there was a raging scene, a nightclub scene, people dancing, is joyful, and I went into the bathroom and I realized, oh my God, fix my lips. I'm a lipstick lesson. Fix my lipstick. There's a disco ball over the dance floor. There's a disco ball in my head in the restroom. And I had an epiphany that my worlds collided, that my nightlife going out heavily in the 70s had slowed down when I got a full-time job and also a full-time relationship. And teaching in Bushwick when it felt don't ask, don't tell, very homophobic. And you'd never think that the drag burlesque scene would be raging in Bushwick 40 years later, that my worlds collided. And this place would be the perfect place to show that. So I went back out. I know this is a long story. And I said to Jean-Stéphane, I said, how's it going? Showing the work in the basement. He goes, oh, it's fine. We figured it out. We bolt the pictures to the wall. So it's no theft. So I said, do you still want to show my work here in June? And he said, oh, yes. So, and then that was gone. Then I came back 2 weeks later because I figured, make sure he wasn't just busy and high on the moment. I spoke to him and his business partner, Greg Bobo. They're both French. And I said, to make sure you really are still interested, absolutely, your work is history. It's important. They got it. It's important for people to understand where they stand. You're on holy ground from someone else's blood, sweat, and tears. And we said, yes, it was going to be part of, September, there'll be a show in June of my Bushwick work. I never even told him that I had an idea of showing my disco work. But then during one of those New York City snowstorms, February, biggest snowstorm you can imagine, Jean-Stéphane says, come, there's a Bushwick Nightlife Awards, but I want to come out with me, and Laura's going to be part of it, but I want to talk to you. I get out there, and he says, I want to do a book. What? Yes, a book of your work. It's like, a book? It's like, we're talking about February. The show is in June. And he doesn't also know that I started to apply to real publishers for my Bushwick work. And I think he's nuts. I said, you mean a catalog? He said, no, a book. It's not a handbook. And I'm thinking, well, I said, well, I don't want to just show my Bushwick work. I want to show my disco work. It's a long story, but they belong together. And he goes, disco work? I said, yes. I really went out heavily and I photographed the disco scene. He said, really, can I see them? I said, well, I need to find them and scan them. I've never shown them to anybody. And he was on a film project in South America. I was familiar with my Bushwick work because started getting familiar with it because I've had several shows, and I would just went to my negative page books and picked up not look for things that said like Studio 54 or Xenon, just picked them up and said, that goes with that, that goes with that, that goes with that. I scanned him, I sent him pictures, and he said, I got it. It's like, I got it. And he said, okay, Patricia, my wife was a design manager for ABC News. Okay, she'll design a book. We'll just go through the motions of doing it. Well, guess what? That book came out with the show in June, and it went viral. It's like 1,500 copies they were selling out. It got picked up by all the news ventures around the world. It's like it went viral. So immediately he said, and the concept of the book is Bushwick on one side and the nightlife scene on the other, and how they compare and contrast with each other. And then obviously it was paying itself off. And I said, let's do another one the next year. I said, okay. I said, I know what I want to do it about. Because because whenever I gave a slide presentation of my work, I always end it with a picture of myself growing up on Long Island, wearing one of my ballet outfits, tutu, like bowing. And people in Bushwick said, what is that? And it was hysterical. No, it's funny. And what is that? It's, I have this whole series of when I coming of age in Long Island. And I said, I know exactly what I want to do with it. I want to call it Purgatories in Paradise, Sassy 70s, Suburbia in the City. And Purgatory was based on it. I grew up in a town called Massapequa. Its nickname was Matzo Pizza, mostly Italian and Jewish, Irish. Patty, my wife, is from Massapequa as well. And when I was around 7 years old, there was a little girl down the block who I was playing with outside of her house. And then she stopped me for a second and she said, looked at me very seriously, a little tall, and says, you can never go to heaven. Like, I can never go to heaven. I'm 7. What I do? I'm a nice kid. Well, why can't I go to heaven? The best you can do is go to purgatory. I said, purgatory? What is purgatory? She said, well, my uncle's a priest, my aunts are nuns. Because you're Jewish, the best you can do, if you're like perfect, is go to purgatory. And that was my first encounter with anti-Semitism, besides knowing my history of my people, and that marked me. And I realized later, I was never invited in that house. Growing up in Long Island, you were always in and outside of people's house. I was never invited in, and they moved away. I think the neighborhood was too Jewish for them. But whatever, it's like hit me. And when I first went to New York City and I was a freelance illustrator, the first thing I did with a paycheck was buy an antique version of Dante's Purgatory of Paradise. And I never read it. I just looked at the pictures. I needed to own it, and so I said, I want to do that. I want to show the contrast, like where my heritage of humor comes from. And it comes from my family and my tradition, but it's like part of my genes. I see funny. Long Island versus the street life and nightlife in New York City, showing more. And that's where, because Long Island was Fire Island, those pictures, the first time I ever showed those pictures, and woo! So there was that book. So Purgatory, so Sassy 70s. So the first 2 books, Visions of 1500, sold out completely. People selling $350, and then honestly, there was a tragedy in my family, and so I need a little break. And I was also showing my work more here and getting represented by galleries and showing internationally. But it was another book I want to do. Bizarre, John Stefan. The bar was closing for several reasons, but mostly because he was working on a Hollywood film and he really wanted time to focus. And he said, I can't do this. That, we talked about the next book. And he said it was so much, I had so much of this nightlife work. Some of it was like so risque that I didn't even dare show up before. And more that I kept on discovering Bushwick. But so let's show a little more of the risque and life in the school. And he said, I need to focus on my film. I can't do it. But he helped me edit it from start to finish. We're such dear friends. And I got a grant from some place called the Leonians Foundation to help pay for the course. I haven't never done a Kickstarter. I just like let them pay for themselves. And this time, so it was just Patricia and I. She was on it. We called ourselves Parallel Pictures Press. And the third book and that too came out in the midst of the pandemic, launched with a solo show at Clamp, my gallery. And now that's grab it quick. There's probably like 200 copies left. And now, so the third book it's not so strictly one side or the other. I think it's brilliant. It goes back and forth. The book, it's like a living sculpture. And now I'm working on my fourth book that's going to being published by iShot, EYESHOT in Italy, and it's going to be the queerest convened book of like gay San Francisco and New York City, Fire Island, Florida, Mardi Gras, a lot of things that have never been seen before, and it's coming out in the late autumn. Pre-order it now. So it gives you an idea. So it's been a digging in, but also going back into and seeing my work again and choosing it with a different perspective. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does.
In some place like New York City, when you see the subway, you'll see someone reading the Bible, the Torah, the Quran. They're reading the same things again and again and again, and they're finding new meaning. It's like I'm looking through my archives and seeing it a new way. And I haven't even started on the serious color, thousands of slides.
Well, at your gallery showing in St. Pete, I had the good fortune of being able to pick up a copy of the New York Paradise Lost book. Unfortunately, I didn't get you to sign it, but I do have an interesting version of it. I know there's only a handful left, but your dear friend, Judy Jupiter, went through my copy of the book and she kissed every page that has her picture on it and left her lipstick imprints on that page. So it's a little bit of a unique keepsake.
You're one of a kind.
So far.
Yeah. Actually, why don't you just pick up and I'll talk a little about those two pictures for a second to give you an idea. But like one page that she kissed, or any page. Because everything in art, and saying Matthew and Fritz beautifully curated the show. It's looking things in a new way and putting them together according to their space, they know their community. And for example, on the left, there's Judy and some other characters. It's I think pick it up a little to see the title. Would you raise it slightly up, please? They're petting a rabbit, right? And it's at a club. It's at a Les Mouches, a very hot club at the time. One of the lesser known.
It's called Pet Rabbit with Judy Jupiter, Les Mouches, New York, June 1978.
Yes, and so it was a theme party, and then it's contrasted with a live poultry place in Bushwick, and these pictures I took with a point and shoot camera, walking to and from my job as a teacher, and thank God I did.
And you even, kind of teased the controversy right on the cover, because the photograph on the cover
Pussy and Dick.
Blatantly has the
Yellow
word
leg.
pussy and dick.
I thought it's the best way I could say adult content. And actually based here, but they also all over the States and elsewhere. But they have sponsor public art shows, and I had the opportunity. I applied for it and was able to exhibit my Bushwick photographs on the school fence in the school where I taught, and they were curated by the principal. And she said, it was amazing to exhibit them exactly where they were. And the principal said, well, can I see more of the books? And at first she goes by the name of Miss Bruce. It's like very old world, and Miss Meisler, and a colleague of mine who I taught with said, oh, you better not show her your books. And she asked when we went there and she approved of it. And I said, no, and I need to be straightforward. I said, my books are not appropriate for children. She says, I know, I looked you up. Don't worry, I'll take care of it. And so having the work exhibited in Fire Island, having the work exhibited in a queer LGBTQ friendly city, or even contrast, the same vibes, it's fun. And so having my Bushwick work shown on the school fence where I taught was phenomenal.
Now, while you were teaching art all those years in New York, did you ever have an idea that your photography would be important to the world? Did you think it was going to take on this kind of a life, or did you just think, oh, well, I'm documenting it and, there might be a small audience, but did you ever expect it to take off as a second career later in life the way it has?
I think bottom line is no. But all along, I always exhibited my work. I never stopped being parts of organizations, different artist communities exhibiting. I did have some grants and some successes back and forth, but I did not realize that my straight, they're so unstraight. I mean, I'm queer. If I have a very queer eye, my straight documentary work would get this level of this attention, or did I realize it was that good? And so what fun, what a gift. And also being, truthfully, being able to focus full time on it is a big difference rather than having an intensive job. But again, most of our teachers are artists, people, English teachers, they write, they comes from place. And so if there are educators out there, don't stop doing what you love, because otherwise you might as well just lay down. You might as well just be in a factory, making bombs. It comes from there. So I continued to make photographs, paint, draw, exhibit it, be part of artist extended communities. I wanted this. I wanted this. If I was independently wealthy, if I was a trust fund child, if I had married a nice lawyer, doctor, as it should have been my lifestyle, it's something else. Maybe I could have been a full-time artist, but it wasn't my destiny, or it also wasn't me. I'm someone who needed security. I couldn't even handle it. I didn't like the freelance life. I needed to have I wanted a steady paycheck. For 2 years, in 77 to 78, there was, actually in 78 and 79, there was a grant that I applied for called CETA, Comprehensive Employment Training Act. And I used my photographs of Jewish Long Island to apply for a CETA job, where they were hiring artists like the WPA of the 70s. And I got chosen. At first I got rejected, but it seems I was I was a runner-up and someone who had made too large of an income. And I was hired by the American Jewish Congress to be a documentary photographer, archive one of 3 photographers to document Jewish New York, and also pursue my own family roots history. So me making $10,000 a year, I thought I was loaded. But my time was flexible, so I had that self-esteem that my work was I felt important. And so when I went out clubbing at night, I had that same self-confidence in my eye. I just wasn't showing it. I was approached the same way. And thank you, Sita. And Sita, grants for artists, I mean, you live in the state, Florida. I mean, the fact that the governor just zeroed out the budget for the arts is like, oh my, oh, we were in, people vote. Sita was a job training program. Part of my volunteer work is that I volunteer to teach photography to homebound handicap and to young kids in after school programs to build my self-confidence as a teacher. And guess what? Because even though I graduated with an art teaching degree, I was scared to teach. It paid off. Look, I became a public school art teacher. Wouldn't happen without Sita. It actually paid back. I gave back. And Sita gave to me because with that confidence for those 2 years that I had the grant, I photographed everything with that same self of like being part that I'm witnessing history. And you know what? All of us are with history. We are part of history now. And no matter what, whether it's you photograph, whether you write, whether you do podcasts and you videos, what you do, you are part of it. You are a witness. You are a change maker. And don't let anyone tell you you're not important. And there are, especially in the arts field, there are people who shoot to the stars. That's it. They're like immediately successful, whatever it is. But there's room for all of us. It's hard to concept real. The table is infinite. There's more chairs for all of us. And so whatever it is that makes you want to get up in the morning or stay up at night or cheers your bad mood or makes you feel a sense of importance and joy, pursue it. Whether it's cooking, but gardening, whatever it is, you have a right to it. And you have a voice. Don't continue doing it.
Absolutely. And that's why I try to document, through these videos that I do, these interviews with different people, I don't try to focus on, the millionaire owner of 12 bars or whatever. I've interviewed DJs, lighting techs, people who just went to the club, all kinds of different people, because everybody's opinion is important and everybody's story is part of history. And I don't mean to burst your bubble or to rain on your parade, but I think we're really glad that you were not born a trust fund child, because the grittiness and authenticity of your photographs probably would not be there if you had grown up on Park Avenue, chauffeured around in a Rolls Royce. You would have had a different perspective, and this gives you the down-to-earth, real person perspective that makes your photography so important to the documentation of these events. So I'm kind of glad that you weren't a trust fund child.
Thank you, Art. I also, and the funny thing, and not being, I never felt like I was right for commercial photography, because no matter what I did, people came and looking at funny. And I know, even I took writing classes, I had no interest in it. I've also never had to ask to anybody. And so and that's what John Stefan Sauveur of Bizarre, like I said, he's a filmmaker, and he's in his films. Let's say a film about child soldiers in Africa. He hired real child soldiers and taught them to act. His most recent film, he did a film about based on a story of a boxer from the UK who was in Thailand prison. In the film, he found real ex-cons and taught them that. His most recent film that just came out, that was one that he couldn't do the book with me, but edited it from start to finish, is about ambulance. It stars Sean Penn, and it's about people working EMT, emergency
Medical technician.
workers. He hired real EMT workers besides the stars, like and people in his neighborhood on the street to be real people. So he understands raw talent. And I'm not raw talent. I am educated. I do know about the history of photography. I wouldn't be taking these pictures if I didn't see the work of someone like Versailles doing his nightlife, or Arbus's of everyday people, or Jacques Henri Lartigue, a Frenchman who photographed his childhood pictures. I mean, you're influenced by we all stand on the shoulders of those who came before us and just give us the courage to go forth.
Absolutely. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to tell us about some of the history of your photography and your life in the gay scene, as well as in the New York scene in general. But one thing I did want to ask, if people want to learn more about you, if they want to read up more on Meryl Meisler, where do they go? What's your website?
MerylMeisler.com, MErylMeisler.com, and I'm represented by CLAMP, CLAMP. It's 5-minute walk from my house. It's a wonderful gallery. It's like right in Chelsea, right here. Couldn't be a better match. And then I'm also represented by POLKA, POLKA, in Paris and French-speaking countries. And I have 4 upcoming group museum shows. 2 days, could be another Fire Island show at the Long Island Museum in Stony Brook. In February, on Valentine's, at the Musée de Musique in Paris, France. It's a show called I'm Coming Out, and I have like almost 175 pictures in it, slideshows and on the walls. And then there's going to be another show at Photographica, which is they're worldwide, but it's going to be a New York show about New York City nightlife. And they contacted me, and then at the Alice Austin Museum in Staten Island, which is the museum based. Staten Island is from country, but there's this Alice Austin house was the home of a woman named Alice Austin, and there she lived with her lover in 1900s, and it's an LGBTQ landmark museum, and I'm going to be in a show about lesbians on the seashore. So when I was in Fire Island, besides photographing tea dance, I went along the shore like looking for lesbians and saying, they're using some pictures from the 70s by one contemporary, and everyone except for one couple said they were shy. I said yes.
Well, I am so grateful for the work that you've done, and for the fact that after your retirement from teaching, you're still active out there. You're still going out and attending shows and having exhibitions and being involved with things like, Bobby Bonanno's project and all this stuff, that it's clearly a passion for you. It's clearly something that you want to share with the world. And I am so grateful to you for doing that and for taking the time to do this interview with me. And we look forward to seeing what comes up in the future with Meryl Meisler.
And Art, I am grateful to you for what you are doing on recording a history and continuing your passion and lifting people up. Okay,
thank you.
That's how we're going to get through this together. We lift each other up.
If you were closer, I'd give you a hug right now.
Okay, we will see each other again. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Meryl.